So that's all for now. Bye. Can I edit and upload this video? Okay, why not? But do show me before uploading. Tell me honestly, do you regret it?
What?
Proposing reading books and talking about books in front of the camera?
No, why?
Because it's terribly boring?
I don't find it boring.
Then perhaps I have lost the ability to sit quietly and read and think.
I told you earlier, you Homo sapiens on this earth have lost the ability to engage with long, meaningful narrative. You have become too myopic.
And your solution to that problem is to create more videos.
Create more videos talking about books. Antidote to a poison is a poison mixed with good medicine. Books are medicines.
Perhaps. Are you really me from parallel world?
Yeah, let's see. I like my coffee black and with a hint of black pepper in it.
Me too. But that's not a very solid argument, since I have been serving you that coffee.
You have not served me tea yet, and I'll tell you, I like my tea with milk and with a hint of cardamom in it.
I also like my tea that way. With all your claims that you're from parallel Earth and your planet is better, you might as well be lying to me.
Yeah, I could be, but you got no other option but to trust me.
Why don't you take me to your planet someday?
I can't. Not because I don't want to, but I myself don't know how all this works. I just wish and I appear on your planet.
That's very convenient for you. Just wishing and appearing, breaking space-time fabric willy-nilly. Why can't I do that?
I don't know. Maybe sometime in the future you can do it too. Somehow. And even if you could visit my planet, could you tell the difference between the two worlds? What if I told you you're already on my planet and that while you're asleep, I have kidnapped you here?
Have you kidnapped me?
Don't panic, of course not. My point is, our worlds are more or less similar. Mine is just a little bit better.
And I'm supposed to believe you. How many pages you've read so far?
I am at page 115.
I'm at 64. How many pages you read now?
I finished the book 2 hours ago. I was just going through it again.
You finished the book? I'm still at 120. Hi, I'm a Homo sapien
Of all
from...
the millions of species on your planet, which one is yours?
That would be Canis familiaris.
You mean dogs?
Yes, I mean dogs.
Mine is Homo sapiens, especially females.
I did not ask because I did not need to know. Hi, I'm a Homo sapien from planet Earth, the real Earth, and I call myself Alpha.
And I'm a Homo sapien from the parallel Earth, and he calls me Beta.
My first impression about this book is the language. I find Darwin's language very appropriate, very objective, gentlemanly, and of course very scientific.
Of all the brilliant things in the book, you like language.
It's called first impression. Let's see what profound first impression you got.
My first impression was envy.
What?
A sense of envy for Darwin, the kind of love he had for nature, his keen observation for nature. I wish I had that kind of love for nature and keen sense of observation.
So apparently, for those who missed their basic biology class, Darwin was an English naturalist, a biologist, and apparently also a geologist. There are long chapters in the book on geology, and we did not know that. Hey, don't count men with you. I knew he was a geologist. Darwin happened on my planet as well. I've read his book several times. Darwin was also a pigeon fancier. And what is pigeon fancy? I do not know. I did not know, but after reading the book, I had a pretty much understanding what pigeon fancier is. There's copious writing on pigeons, apparently Darwin's favorite bird. Darwin proposed theory of evolution, which means that all the flora and fauna that we see today has or have ancestors, common ancestors back in the remote past. The theory of evolution. During Darwin's lifetime, that is mid-19th century, prominent belief was God created everything. Every animal, every tree was distinctly created by God. And after deep observation, Darwin probably started to doubt this. He believed there cannot be a single originator. Everything must have a common ancestor somewhere and not a creator as such. So Darwin, I think I have a quote here, and by this quote you will understand what I meant by liking the language, Darwin's language. So here's a quotation by Darwin. Quote, "Although much remains obscure and will long remain obscure, I can entertain no doubt after the most deliberate study and dispassionate judgment of which I am capable that the view which most naturalists until recently entertained and which I formerly entertained, namely that each species has been independently created, is erroneous." Darwin further says, quote, "I am fully convinced that species are not immutable, but that those belonging to what are called the same genre are lineal descendants of some other and generally extinct species, in the same manner as the acknowledged varieties of any one species are the descendants of that species. Furthermore, I am convinced that natural selection has been the most important but not the exclusive means of modification." And that is probably how this book is summarized. So, do you have any introductory remarks? Yeah, sure. You forgot to mention that we have read the 6th edition of the book. That is the edition that Darwin edited before his death. And the second remark was Darwin mentions in his introduction that he was reluctant to publish the book that he has been working on for almost 23 years. But he came to know there was his compatriot, Mr. Alfred Russel Wallace, who also came up with the same idea. So Darwin probably thought he might be left behind in the credit. So he acknowledged Mr. Wallace's contribution in the theory, and he also mentions several other naturalists' work that helped him improve his understanding about this theory. For me, I think personally, genius of Darwin, the genius of Darwin doesn't come from formulating the theory in isolation. It was mostly he read all the other naturalists, contemporary naturalists' work, and from that he connected the dots. So a lonely genius is a myth. It's mostly a genius is someone who connects the dots that already exist. I can say same thing about Albert Einstein as well. So at the offset, Darwin mentions variations under domestication, variations in the flora and fauna, that is plants and animals. Darwin mentions how under human domestication there can be varieties of plants and animals that humans develop for their own use. For example, dogs. human beings bred varieties of dogs, but they still come from same family, that is Canis familiaris, the species. Same goes for his favorite bird, pigeon. Varieties of pigeons, shapes, colors, they all come under same bird family, Columbidae. And this is how Darwin mentions at the outset varieties happen under human domestication.
Yeah, that's right. Darwin goes on to describe variations occur not only under human domestication but also in the nature, in the wilderness. And for that he uses the phrase natural selection as opposed to human selection. What nature has been doing all along, humans have learned just now, this selection process. And apparently Darwin quotes Mr. Herbert Spencer, and survival of the fittest is what's Mr. Spencer's phrase. This is how the nature does her natural selection. Darwin also quotes another naturalist called Milne Edward, and the quotation is, "Nature is prodigal in variety but niggard in innovation." Meaning, if something works, keep improving on that rather than inventing new thing. That's how nature works. Struggle to exist. That's what life is all about, regardless it's in the wilderness or in a civilized Homo sapiens society. Struggle for existence is what life is all about. I'd like a Darwin quote here. I would like to quote Darwin here. So, quotation: "Nothing is easier than to admit in words the truth of the universal struggle for life, or more difficult, at least I found it so, than constantly to bear this conclusion in mind. Yet, unless it to be thoroughly ingrained in the mind, the whole economy of nature, with every fact on distribution, rarity, abundance, extinction, and variation, will be dimly seen or quite misunderstood. We behold the face of nature bright with gladness. We often see superabundance of food. We do not see, or we forget, that the birds which are idly singing around us mostly live on insects or seeds, and thus constantly destroying life. Or we forget how largely these songsters or their eggs or their nestlings are destroyed by birds and beasts of prey. We do not always bear in mind that, though food may be now superabundant, it is not so at all seasons of each recurring year." Very poignant about struggle for life. I have few notes here. Competition to exist and procreate, and in spite of such competition, helping each other across different species to flourish, happens in nature all the time. In book, Darwin mentions how individuals under one species struggle to exist, fighting against odds such as unfavorable climate, scarce resources, competition with each other, with other members of the same species, and for resources with other species, both in flora and fauna. So, although there's competition, interdependence is also a useful tool for survival. Particular species, suppose a particular species of tree, the survival of the tree is dependent on some kind of a fly. If that fly goes into extinction, the tree survival also comes under question. So the tree will provide all the nourishment for the fly to flourish, saps and nectars and so on. So that kind of interdependence happens in nature all the time.
One way that nature likes to do her selection is through sex. Again, one more quotation from Darwin. Quote, "Sexual selection is less rigorous than natural selection. Generally, the most vigorous males, those which are best fitted for their places in nature, will leave most progeny. But in many cases, victory depends not so much on general vigor, but on having special weapons confined to the male sex. Hornless stag or spurless cock would have a poor chance of leaving numerous offsprings. Sexual selection, by always allowing the victor to breed, might surely give indomitable courage, length of spur, and strength to the wing to strike in the spurred leg, in nearly the same manner as does the brutal cockfighter by the careful selection of his cocks." How apt double entendre. Seriously? And you call us earthlings shallow? I'm just being playful. You don't take yourself so seriously. What we talked about until now was the whole gamut of Darwin's theory. The chapters hereafter are just Darwin's explanation to the objection of his theory. I assume Darwin published this much as a book, and then he got objections to his theory, and so he added these chapters later on. And these are the chapters about geology and he answering the objections to his questions. Just a side note, while reading the book, I was always reminded, Darwin had described the natural world in such vivid details that I was always reminded of these documentaries narrated by David Attenborough. Very vivid description that Darwin provides us. Yeah. Now I have a note here regarding objections. So obvious question back then was, how can a sophisticated organ such as an eye can evolve naturally? So here I'd like to read a long passage, please bear with me. Darwin says, to suppose that the eye, with all its imitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for admitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. When it was first said that the sun stood still and the world turned round, the common sense of mankind declared the doctrine false. But the old saying of vox populi vox Dei, as every philosopher knows, cannot be trusted in science. Reason tells me that if numerous gradations from a simple and imperfect eye to one complex and perfect can be shown to exist, each grade being useful to its possessor, as is certainly the case, if further the eye even ever varies, and the variations be inherited, as is likewise certainly the case, and if such variations should be useful to any animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection, though insuperable by our imagination, should not be considered as subversive of the theory. Unquote. So Darwin goes on into detail answering all objections to his theory. So that's all in all the book is all about. Last few chapters are on geology, and if we go on discussing, this video will go too long and become boring. So we'll stop here. Maybe in the future we'll pick this book again. It's an important book, a similar work, and we are still amateurs at this, talking about books. So once we get more habitual with this, maybe we'll pick this book again. Yeah, I don't think we're doing any justice to this book. Maybe we should have chosen a simple book, but it's a start. So maybe in the future we'll pick this book again for full details. While reading the book, I was constantly reminded how fortunate to be born and to exist till now. I feel very fortunate, very grateful that I exist, and I am in a constant pursuit of refining my knowledge and understanding. That's what I learned. I also had same realization along that line. I again would like to quote, this time Carl Sagan. It's a quotation from Carl Sagan, quote, "Extinction is the rule, survival is exceptional." And that summarizes how the nature works. So for the next book, we have decided we'll choose alternatively. First will be my choice, and he will choose his book. After Darwin's book, my choice is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. The subtitle of the book is The Brief History of Humankind, and I chose this book because it's a relevant book. The kind of conversation we're having, I thought it would be pertinent to carry on the conversation regarding Homo sapiens history. So for the next book, I choose Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and after that, you have any book on your mind? Yeah, Malanga Vasana's Kama Sutra. What? No. Why not? It's a valid book. Sexuality and eroticism is an integral part of Homo sapiens' life. Don't be so prudish. I'm not being prudish, you lusty, lubricious, lascivious lecher. Your alliterative name calling will not bother me. That's the book I've chosen and we're reading it. We'll see about that. So that's all for now. Bye. Can I edit and upload this video? Okay, why not? But do show me before uploading. Did you read they found phosphine on Venus? I read.